What about second breakfast?
Time for second breakfast.
What's up, everybody? Monster from Breakdowns for Breakfast here with another spooky season edition of Second Breakfast. On today's episode, I'm going to do something just a teeny tiny little bit different. Instead of talking about music, I'm going to talk about movies. Now, anybody who's listened to the show a couple times knows that the whole reason I'm called Monster is because I'm a monster movie guy. I love horror films. I love Halloween season. I love monsters. So what I wanted to do, again, podcast math is hard, but if I'm not mistaken, this will come out on October 30th, the day before Halloween. So what I wanted to do today was give you guys my top 10 favorite Universal monster films. Now, I kind of got these in an order, but honestly, it kind of depends on the mood. If you want something that's a little bit more dark and atmospheric, there's certain ones you would go for. But if you wanted something that was a little more jovial and tongue-in-cheek, then there's some you would go for there. So I do kind of have them in a 10-to-1 ranking, but don't hold me to it. All 10 of these are my favorites. And depending on the mood, a few of them would definitely get moved around. So in order to kind of give you what my top 10 are, what I wanted to do first was give just a teeny tiny, itty bitty little history lesson on Universal monster films. Now, there are whole books and podcasts and TV series dedicated to this. So this is not the end all be all. I would highly recommend checking out the Monster Rally podcast, the Monsters That Made Us podcast, Monsters Never Die. These are all really good podcasts that do really deep dives into basically the history of Universal, but specifically deep dives into each film in the series. And depending on how you want to look at it, there's 30... The way I look at it is the whole thing kind of got kicked off in 1931 with Dracula, and also subsequently Frankenstein came out later that year, and spans all the way up through 1956, with the last one being The Creature Walks Among Us, from the Creature from the Black Lagoon series. Now, some people say it started a little bit before that, because in 1913, I think it was, you had Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and then 1925 maybe was the original Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney Sr. And so some people kind of started back there. But for this list, I'm going to go with what I always considered the Universal Collection, because a couple years ago, my beautiful, loving wife, Mrs. Monster, got me the 30-film Blu-ray set that, not to be overdramatic, kind of changed my life. It really made me say, you know what? I love the Evil Dead movies. Those are probably my favorite movies of all time, especially Evil Dead 2. I love it. But I love the Evil Dead movies. I love slasher flicks. I love zombies. I'm a huge George Romero fan. But once I started watching these Universal monsters, it changed my perspective on horror and filmmaking in general. So I'm going to give just a teeny tiny itty bitty little history thing here, and just kind of list a couple of names that are going to come up repeatedly, because that's one of the most, I don't want to say fun parts, but something very fascinating about these Universal monsters is it's almost like the original shared universe, which it's kind of sad because now they were going to try to do that again with the Dark Universe after Marvel had their success with, the Marvelverse. And they really kind of shit the bed on that whole idea. Originally, for some reason, they went with the Mummy with Tom Cruise as the first one, which seems like not the best choice. But instead of making a small horror film, they made a Marvel film. It was an action movie, and people just weren't into it. Subsequently, over the past few years, there have been some other takes on the Universal monsters that have turned out really well. Lee Wanell, who wrote the original Saw film, he's also in Saw. He wrote and directed An Invisible Man, I think in like 2020s, and it's great. It's very like modernized. He also did a Wolfman film in like 2024, which was not great. It tried some things, but it just didn't really pan out very well. As of recording this, Guillermo del Toro is getting ready to do his own version of Frankenstein, which I am very excited about because you're getting ready to find out I am a huge Frankenstein fan. But, you know, and obviously there's all kinds of other films over the past 100 years with these characters in it. But this is sort of the beginning, and like I said, when I started watching these films, I just completely transported into another world, and I fell in love with these films. So, a couple of names, couple of facts, real quick off the dome. The main guy that started this whole thing is Carl Laemmle Jr. He was the head of Universal at this time. And his sort of idea started with taking literary books like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein, Dracula. These are novels that they could adapt into film. But after Dracula is very different than the book, but Frankenstein, he purposely changed the ending to be able to he was already had the wheels spinning about repurposing these characters and keeping these things going. So he already had this, I don't want to say a shared universe in mind, but sequels and, you know, profitability was obviously very important. Couple of names that are really important that'll come up a lot on this. Todd Browning. He is the guy who directed the first Dracula film and kind of essentially the first proper Universal monster film. He also is kind of known, 1 year later, he directed a film called Freaks, which is really, really good if you've never seen that. But he came from the silent era. So that first Dracula film, in a lot of ways, feels like a play. And funny side note, me and Mrs. Monster last year, the year before, actually went to an old theater here in Greensboro, North Carolina, where they showed the 1931 Dracula as a silent film with an organist playing an original score on top of it. It was great. It was a really neat way to see it in a totally different way. I will say, taking the sound out does ruin my favorite character from that movie. We'll get there. Another important name here is James Whale. He was one of the first openly gay directors in Hollywood. And he directed some of the absolute best horror films in the 30s and 40s, including the original Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, and The Invisible Man, which are all going to come up in a few minutes. But he also directed a film called The Old Dark House in 1932 that starred Boris Karloff and a couple other people from this Universal world. And that's a really good film, too. Whale has a really good way of being creepy and scary and atmospheric while also being funny. There's a lot of humor in his films. You can't talk about the Universal monsters without talking about Mr. Jack Pierce. Jack Pierce did the makeup for pretty much all of these monsters. Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man. He did all of the makeup and all the effects. And his transformation in the Wolfman is kind of considered one of the best of all time. Not because it's technically, you know, obviously American Werewolf in London is very graphic and very, you know, and then also Thriller when Michael Jackson does his transformation. Those are more lifelike and visceral. But the way they did the stop and start with the makeup and the hair, nobody had seen anything like that before. So Jack Pierce is very important. Now, one of the funnest parts, yeah, that's a word, sure, is about these films is the incestual nature, I guess you could say, because there are so many of these actors that you will see come up again and again playing different characters in different films. So, like, for example, you might have Bela Lugosi as Dracula in the first Dracula film, and he's the main person. But then in Son of Frankenstein and Ghost of Frankenstein and House of Frankenstein, like all of those films, Bela Lugosi now plays a side character named Igor, who is possibly Bela Lugosi's best role. He's very much known as Dracula, but him as Igor is so much fun, and we'll get to him in a minute. But and then obviously Boris Karloff is another one. Boris Karloff was sort of the I don't want to say the superstar of this whole thing, but he played Frankenstein's monster, and he pretty much after that he was always the go-to for the next, monster. But somebody that doesn't always get enough love, I think, is Lon Chaney Jr., because he plays the Wolfman. But he also goes on to be in all of these other movies. At one point, he plays the Mummy in one of the Mummy movies. At one point, he plays Dracula in one of the Dracula movies. At one point, he plays Frankenstein's monster. So it's kind of wild that Lon Chaney Jr. did all of those creatures. But he's really mostly known as just the Wolfman, because he is also the only actor to have played the same monster each time. Like, Frankenstein's monster gets played by Lon Chaney Jr., Bela Lugosi, a couple other people. Same with the Mummy. It starts off as Boris Karloff, but then it becomes other people. Lon Chaney Jr. is the only one to ever play the Wolfman. Now, there is a, what is it? The Werewolf of London, I think is what it is, that came out before the Wolfman, but it's just not very good. So it doesn't, it's in this, it is in the 30. It is in part of the 30 collection, and it's not bad. The wolf transformation in that predates, I'm knocking stuff over, I'm so excited, predates the Wolfman. So again, Jack Pierce did the makeup. So it's not bad, but it's not in my top 10. I'll say that much. So speaking of the top 10, let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to say some names. I'm going to give a little bit of plot synopses, but obviously I don't want to give a whole lot away, because some of these movies are literally almost 100 years old. So like at this point, like, yeah, I mean, you should, what is spoilers after 80, 90 years? But at the same time, because these are so old, a lot of people today just haven't seen them. So I'm not going to try to spoil anything too much, but I'm going to kind of give you an idea of sort of the vibe of a lot of these movies. So, and again, this is sort of in an order, but you ask me tomorrow, I'd probably put them in a different order. So, I haven't watched all of these super recently, just over the past couple years. So maybe I go back and watch them now, I'd feel a little different. But these are 10 really good ones if you want to jump into this. So number 10, I started with The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, what's interesting, and this was from 1954. So if you notice the date, I said this all kind of started in the 1931 or so, if you want to, whatever. But The Creature from the Black Lagoon was the last monster to be introduced, because in the 50s, you started to get into the atomic age. And there was a lot of these B movies coming out with giant spiders and giant ants and, sea creatures. And, obviously, King Kong and Godzilla are, come up too. But this was Universal's atomic age monster. The effects on the Gill-Man are incredible. It looks phenomenal. Funny side note, the actor, so there's 3 Creature from the Black Lagoon films. The same actor who plays all the underwater scenes for the Gill-Man, which is what we call the Creature from Black Lagoon, the Gill-Man. Because that's something kind of special, especially about this first one, is there is a lot of really cool underwater shots that you weren't really, I mean, obviously in the 50s things were starting to progress, but that was still kind of like newer technology. And if I'm not mistaken, the original Creature from the Black Lagoon was actually, when it was first released, it was in 3D, which, we kind of think of 3D as sort of more of a modern thing. Obviously in the 80s you had the blue and red glasses and stuff, but this predates all that, so that's kind of cool. Number 9, I've got Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Now, Abbott and Costello are, why did I say Costello? Costello, they were a hilarious comedy duo back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and they basically did these Meat movies. There's several in the Universal world, but there's also some where they meet other creatures and monsters and stuff. But in the Universal catalog, there's Abbott and Costello meet the Invisible Man, meet the Mummy, and meet Frankenstein. And the Invisible Man one is very funny. It is definitely very funny. But I kind of prefer this one to all the other ones because Bela Lugosi returns as Dracula, which is pretty cool because up until this, I think he's done like some promo stuff. He's played other vampires very similar to Dracula, but as in name Dracula. This is the last time he does it. So I think, and I think the comedy in this one's really good. If you've never seen an Abbott and Costello film, they're very funny. One's kind of the straight man, one's kind of the goofy guy, and this plays very much like something you would see in Scooby-Doo or something. But here's the thing that makes these movies great. All the Abbott and Costello movies. What's fun is they are comedic. The monsters stay the monsters. The creature, Frankenstein's monster, he doesn't do anything silly. Dracula doesn't do anything silly. They are meant to be the monsters. It's just very, they play it straight while Abbott and Costello, ham it up. And they're a lot of fun. At number 8, I've got The Invisible Agent from 1942. Now, I mentioned a podcast earlier, the Monster Rally podcast, which is a lot of fun. And they basically go through every single Universal movie and talk about it and everything. And they really kind of shit on this movie. And I don't know why. I think this movie's a lot of fun. Now, if you notice the date, 1942, this takes place during World War II. And we don't often talk about this, but around the World War II era, there was a lot of like American propaganda being made, Uncle Sam posters and that kind of stuff. And everybody was sort of rallying around to do your part for America. And The Invisible Agent is essentially a American propaganda film because what it does is it takes the Invisible Man story where it's kind of a mad scientist who becomes invisible. The character in this one, I think, is like the son or the grandson of the original Invisible Man. And he takes the serum to infiltrate enemy lines. And so he's going and trying to like disrupt all this Nazi stuff. And it's kind of fun. It's not funny, but there's some humor to it. And then there's also some gruesome, almost like torture scenes that are, again, for 1942 standards, kind of crazy. And for it to be the 4th in the Invisible Man series, and not be a giant dumpster fire. It's actually interesting in a new direction. I think it's pretty good. Peter Lorre is in it, and if you don't know who he is, he's a pretty cool actor too. When he first started out, he was very much of a kind of dark, sinister character, and that's kind of what he is here. He actually plays a Japanese bad guy, which is obviously a little problematic by today's standards. But he actually played a Japanese character in a string of films, like 8 or 9 films. Oh, I can't remember the name now. But so he was sort of, I guess people were okay with this. But he's really good in this. Yeah, it's not a great movie, but it's a lot of fun. And I definitely think it's worth watching. I think it's probably better than most of the other Invisible Man sequels, in my opinion. All right, number 7, Dracula's Daughter from 1936. Now, this is one that I had never heard of before I got this box set, and I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't really watch any reviews or listen to any podcasts about these kind of films until after I started watching them. This one is very interesting because there are some really strong lesbian undertones and homosexual stuff that 1936 you weren't seeing in movies. The actress Gloria Holden, she plays Count Zaleska, Dracula's daughter. She is phenomenal. One of the things about these films is the quote-unquote monster is usually sympathetic in some degree. And she is a wonderful example of that. Because yes, she is a vampire. Yes, she is cursed. But she doesn't necessarily want to be. And a large part of the film is her trying to escape that. And I think it's really good. There is some humor in there that I don't think works great. There's kind of a comic relief character. A lot of these films have that. And that's the part that I don't know works really well. But there's these great atmospheric scenes. There's a part where she sends out her henchmen, her goons, Sandor. I think they're familiars as the correct terminology for vampirism. Please don't come at me. And he picks up this homeless girl, and he promises her food and drink, but his master wants to paint her. And so she comes in, and there's this scene where Count Zaleska and this girl, she's getting undressed, and they're like making eyes at each other. And again, it's super, super tame, but by 1936 standards, it was wild. So, great one. I think that one's really good. Like I said, as far as this list goes, there are days where I would probably put that one higher, because I think it's really good. Number 6, Son of Frankenstein from 1939. Most people know the first two Frankenstein films very, very well, and then this one sort of gets lost in the shuffle. I think it deserves to be reevaluated. I don't think it's as good as the first two. Obviously, we haven't talked about those yet, and they're coming. But this one has a lot of good stuff going on. Some of the best parts of this is you have Basil Rathbone, who is a really talented actor. He's not in a ton of these, but he pops up a couple times. He has there's these dialogue heavy scenes where he's talking specifically to the constable, which if you've ever seen Young Frankenstein, the guy with the wooden arm, that's where this came from. A matter of fact, Mel Brooks aped a lot from this film to make Young Frankenstein. But some of those dialogue scenes where they're, the inspector's trying to get some insider information, and Basil Rathbone, he plays it's like Wolf von Frankenstein or something like that. Baron von Wolf Frankenstein, there you go. And Lionel Atwell is the one who plays the inspector, who's also a really good actor from this era. But they have these back and forths that maybe not to this degree, but felt very Tarantino-esque. Like there's a little bit of tension in the room when they're just talking. Also, German expressionism, it was a big thing at this time, especially in the Frankenstein films. When they're inside of the mansion, castle, whatever that you want to call it, the angles are weird, the shadows are wild. Like, I really do think this is a better film than it gets credit for. If you've seen the first two, and I think most horror fans have at some point, check out this one. It's actually really good. And this is also our introduction to Bela Lugosi's Igor, who is nuts. Basically, he's got like this jacked up neck and back shoulder thing because he was hung. I don't know if they ever say exactly why, but he was hung and he didn't die. And so they can't hang him again. So now he's just free to roam around. And he's like, Igor can't die. And his teeth are all jacked up. And he's got terrible facial hair. It's amazing. Bela Lugosi steals every scene he's on the camera for as Igor. A lot of fun. This movie is really good. There is a child actor that I don't want to talk too much shit about children actors, but he kind of messes up everything he's in. So I think that's what most people remember, and that's why they don't remember this movie very fondly. I'd say if you haven't seen it, see it. So number 5, Bride of Frankenstein. One of the biggest problems with Son of Frankenstein is that Boris Karloff plays the Frankenstein's monster in all 3 of the first 3 Frankensteins. But in the first one, he's mute. In Bride of Frankenstein, he starts to talk, and it makes him more sympathetic. But by Son of Frankenstein, he's kind of just this brute monster doing Igor's bidding. So one of the biggest, I don't want to say positives of Bride, is the character, Boris Karloff's portrayal of the creature. It's so sympathetic, and he's so childlike that it's really fantastic. I think that was Karloff's best portrayal of the monster, and I wish he would have kept that going for the third one, but I'm sure they told him not to. So, the other fun part about Bride of Frankenstein is Dr. Pretorius. Now, and we'll get to the first one in a minute, but Dr. Pretorius shows up and basically convinces Dr. Frankenstein that he needs to create a mate for the monster, i.e. the bride. And so they, when he's trying to explain like what he can do and why he's so important, he brings out these jars with these little people in it. Again, it is super silly, and it's definitely, like, by today's standards, kind of corny looking, but it's very cool. Like, it still looks good today. There's also sort of this little wraparound thing where Lancaster, oh god, what is her first name? Whatever. The actress who plays the bride, she actually plays Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, at the beginning of the film. So it's kind of cool that she's there. There's also sort of, why didn't I write her name down? Uda, whatever. She plays like the comic relief in this, and she also does it in The Invisible Man. We'll get to her in a minute. And I've heard different people say, I think it's Uda O'Connor. Yeah. Some people love it. Some people think it's a bit much. I personally would have been okay without so much of it, but she hams it up, and she is very memorable. It's so funny to me that the bride herself has gone down as such an iconic figure. Like, you see the hair, you see the face, you immediately recognize it. I think she's on screen for 10 minutes, 8 minutes, something. Actually, you know what? I think less than that, because she's really only in it for one scene. So it's wild that she's become this iconic figure. But great film. Everybody thinks it's a great film. Now, number 4, I've got The Wolfman. And see, this is another example. 4 and 3, I could switch these around. Some days I would put Bride higher. But The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr., and he plays Larry Talbot, the main guy. Claude Rains plays his dad, Sir John Talbot, which is kind of funny because they're almost like the same age. And if you don't know anything about Lon Chaney Jr., he's a big dude. Claude Rains is not. So it's very funny that they're supposed to be father and son. I mentioned Claude Rains because he's going to come up in a minute, and he's great. He's got a great voice. He's been in a lot of more prestigious films. He was in The Maltese Falcon. He was in The Phantom of the Opera, the 1930-something version. But he's great. He's a great actor. But anyway, the star of the show, Lon Chaney Jr., is fantastic as the Wolfman. Like I said before, Jack Pierce did the makeup. This is the first. There is a transformation scene in Werewolf of London, but this is the one everybody remembers as kind of the quote-unquote first. It's very good. My favorite parts of this movie are when he is the Wolfman and he's stalking through the woods. This is one of my favorite things about Universal monster movies in general, is that sort of otherworldly vibe and atmosphere. It's obviously fake trees and fog machines, but it feels just otherworldly. Like, it doesn't feel like cheap or bad. It feels like you're on another planet. It's very cool. Bela Lugosi comes back. He actually plays I'm sorry, I don't know if this word is technically correct. In the film, they're called gypsies. I don't think we're supposed to use that word anymore. So I said it once. That's what they're playing. But Bela Lugosi plays one named Bella. And he's, I won't give anything away, but his character is important to the film. And I don't know if it's ever established if it's his mother or his sister or exactly, but there's this other actress named Maria Ospinskaya who is related to Bella, and she has this presence when she's on screen. She kind of gives sort of the exposition and the lore of the werewolf, the Wolfman, and it's great. But this has so much atmosphere. Same with all of these. There has to be like a love triangle. There has to be a little bit of humor. It doesn't always work. You're kind of just Larry Talbot, when he's not the Wolfman, is a little bit of a skis ball. He's sort of not like stalking this girl, but kinda. So some of that is interesting, and some of it's kind of like, all right, let's get on with it. Let's get the Wolfman in here. So number 3 is The Invisible Man from 1933. Now, one of the funny things about The Invisible Man is he technically has the largest body count of any of these monsters, because at one point in the film, he derails a train, and it's awesome. Claude Rains plays the Invisible Man, and you don't ever actually see him, obviously, until later, but the way they do this is he's wrapped in bandages, and he has these goggles. It's an iconic look, and Claude Rains' voice is magnificent. Matter of fact, Mark Hamill has said he had used Claude Rains' maniacal laugh as the Invisible Man as the inspiration behind his version, the animated Joker from the Batman cartoons. So, fantastic. Claude Rains is amazing in this movie. What's also incredible are the special effects, the invisible stuff that happens. Even by today's standards, they are impressive. And I really do mean that. I'm not just saying this with my Universal Monster goggles on. It really is impressive. There's parts where bikes ride by themselves, clothes are walking by themselves, and it's really, really cool. So I feel like when everybody thinks about the monsters, they think of Frankenstein's monster, they think of Dracula, they think of the creature from the Black Lagoon, and the Invisible Man sometimes sort of gets overlooked. I honestly, like when I got the set, this was not one that I was like dying to watch, and then I watched it and loved it. Especially at the very beginning, there's again that otherworldly atmosphere. He's walking in the snow and it's dark and it's fantastic. So number 2, Dracula from 1931. Now, Bela Lugosi as Dracula is very iconic. There's also the part about this movie that I love the most is kind of the first section where this guy named Renfield is on his way to the castle to meet Dracula. And on his way, everybody's telling him, don't go, the place is haunted. And the journey there, and then when he gets to the castle, is some of the best atmosphere and spooky vibe of any of these movies. It's great. Now, the other thing about Renfield, he's played by a guy named Dwight Fry. Dwight Fry is possibly my favorite actor in all of these for this movie and the next one I'm going to talk about. In this one, he plays Renfield. Now, if you don't know the story of Dracula, Renfield is basically like Dracula's little henchman, and he makes him go out and do these things. Dwight Fry plays him with this maniacal energy that is just phenomenal. Every time he's on screen as Renfield, after he becomes like part of Dracula's whatever is familiar, his eyes are bugging out. He's just screaming at the camera every time he's on screen. It's amazing. He's so good in this. This is a really good movie. Like I said before, it's directed by Todd Browning. And, I forgot to mention, The Invisible Man was James Whale. He did The Bride of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, the original Frankenstein. But anyway, Todd Browning is the one who did this one. And it feels a little bit slow. These are all very short movies. I think the runtime on this is only like 70 minutes or something. But there's a lot of just one camera set up, 4 or 5 people on the screen talking back and forth. It's very stage play-esque, which is kind of how this all came together because Bela Lugosi had played Dracula on the stage so many times that it just kind of worked out that way. So, again, I think it does sort of race to the finish. There's some characters and some stuff, and it doesn't necessarily matter all that much. And I feel like the first chunk where they're in the castle and you've got the spooky Universal Castle atmosphere is the best. But Dwight Fry as Renfield is worth price of admission alone. Him and Bela Lugosi as Dracula are wonderful. And number one, I've got the original Frankenstein, also from 1931. Dracula actually came out on Valentine's Day in 1931, and it was so successful that I'm not sure, I think they already had plans to do Frankenstein, but Dracula was a hit. So they were like, let's get this Frankenstein out there now. And when you think of black and white, spooky, foggy horror films from like the 30s and 40s, you're thinking of Frankenstein. Yes, Dracula has the castle, but Frankenstein also has a castle. It also has the mad scientist. It's got all the gizmos and gadgets that shoot lightning and fire and spark and stuff. It's amazing. The set design, the actors, the performances, all of it is just so good. I do think Boris Karloff as the creature is better in Bride, but here it's so good. And what's crazy is he just completely like transforms into this character. Between Jack Pierce's makeup and Boris Karloff's performance, it's just magnificent. Dwight Fry is back. This time he is playing Dr. Frankenstein's little henchman, kind of little hunchback guy, you know. He's the one that's robbing the graves and trying to get the brain and all this kind of stuff. He is great. Dwight Fry is so much fun. Trying to remember what his name is. It's not Igor. Everybody thinks it's Igor, but that's Bela Lugosi later. This is just like his little henchman. What's interesting too is this came out in 1931, and it starts with Edward Van Sloan, who I didn't mention him. Edward Van Sloan is also in a bunch of these movies. He does eventually play Van Helsing in the Dracula thing, but yeah, because he's Van Helsing in Dracula, and then Dracula's daughter, he's in that one too. But he's in this one as kind of the same type of character, like sort of the intrusive one or whatever. But it starts with him basically giving a disclaimer. He walks out on a stage and he said, "What you're about to see might shock you, and might, you know, it's nothing in the movie is going to do this, but it just sets this mood that just carries on throughout the film." I think it's wonderful. This to me is the best of. Again, if you want to say Bride is better, I wouldn't argue with you. A lot of people say that, but for me, I think it's also because this is the first one I watched. I know Dracula was technically came out the same year, it came out earlier, but I watched this one before I watched Dracula, and it really, as soon as it like got going, I was like, okay, I love this stuff. I really love this stuff. So that's it. That's 10 Universal monster movies that you know, if you're having like a Halloween party and you want something on in the background, that you could do a lot worse than just a nice big black and white horror film marathon. Seeing all the iconic, the Invisible Man, the Wolf Man. Hell, throw in a mummy film. I'm sure you noticed there's no mummy films on this. They just don't do it for me. They really don't. And The Creature from the Black Lagoon has 2 sequels. They're not bad, but they didn't wow me as much as some of these other ones. So, are you a fan of Universal Monsters? Do you like this kind of stuff? Or are these just old, boring nonsense? Which, hey, if you don't like this kind of stuff, I get it. But for me, I love it. And this episode's gone on a lot longer than most of these do. But that's just how much I love these movies. So if you got, want to share some of your favorite horror movies, what's your favorite Halloween movies to watch? Let me know. My daughters are 6 and 3 at the moment. They're getting older. I already told my 6-year-old she's about at the age where she can watch some of these. I honestly, it's not that she can't handle them. I just think she'll find them boring. So anyway, but yeah, thank you for hanging out. I hope you're enjoying spooky season. Like I said, I think this comes out right before Halloween. So I hope you have a fun, safe Halloween, eat a bunch of candy, wear something scary, and have a good day.